The time is 10 a.m. and it looks like we are still waiting on one of our LATC members. In the meantime, would you like me to go ahead and get the recording started?
This is Trish. I've called Susan and she's trying to log on right now.
Okay.
So can we give it a minute before we start the recording?
Sure. Actually, it looks like Susan just joined.
Okay, great.
All right. And Susan, can I get a quick mic check from you?
Okay, here I am.
Wonderful. We can hear
There.
you. Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Since we have all our LATC members, I will go ahead and start that recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right.
All right, thank you, everyone. My name is John Roshinsky, the current chair of the Landscape Architecture Technical Committee, and I will call the meeting to order, and I have 10:01. We'll do a quick roll call of the members. Andrew Bowden.
Present.
Pamela Brief.
Present.
Susan Landry.
Present.
And myself, John Roshinsky. I believe we have a quorum. All right, we'll move on. This meeting is being presented as a webcast, and pursuant to the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N29-20 dated March 17th, 2020, a physical meeting location is not being provided. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions to join are attached the agenda to the LATC website, posted on our website. I'm going to ask the committee members to please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. Members should keep their cameras on during the meeting. When you wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature or physically raise your hand on the video. When speaking, please identify yourself each time. And I would ask the moderator to assist me if I miss seeing someone with their hand raised, if you could point that out during the meeting. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge our board liaison, Tian Fang, who is the current California Architects Board president, is in attendance, and I believe we may have Ron Jones, one of the other board members, listening in on the meeting today as well, so I want to acknowledge him. Let's see here. As far as voting goes today, all motions and seconds will be repeated for the record. Votes on all motions will be taken by a roll call vote. Let's see. We'll probably be looking at taking a short break for lunch around noontime if the meeting is still progressing at that point. And if anyone, any of the board members for whatever reason need to take a break during the meeting, just indicate that, and we can take a short break to accommodate that. I'd also like to mention that our new program counsel, Michael Kanitz, is with us today, and if he would like to take just a short, brief moment to introduce himself, and we'd like to welcome him.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. I am Michael Kanitz. That name's been frustrating folks for years, so don't be concerned about that. I am your new legal counsel. It's an honor to serve as legal counsel for the committee and the Architects Board as well. A little bit about me, about my background. I've been with the Department of Consumer Affairs now a little over 2 years. In addition to your board, I have some work I do for the department itself, And then I also have two other boards, the Board of Chiropractic Examiners, and I have the Physical Therapy Board of California. I have a pretty long background in state service. I've been in state service coming up on 20 years. Going backwards, I've been with the Department of Social Services, Developmental Services. I was an elections attorney at the Secretary of State's office, and I was also a deputy legislative counsel early in my state service career. And what seems like another lifetime ago, I was also a deputy public defender in Colorado, in Denver, and then in some of the Western mountain regions. But a little bit about me. Again, honored to be here, and looking forward to working with you all and serving as your legal counsel.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Michael. We likewise. All right, and before we get started or go any further, I'd just like to ask the other board members if there's any particular comments or anything that they'd like to bring up at this point in time before we get into the agenda.
John, I just want, for the record, I just joined the meeting. This is Tian Peng from Architects Board.
All right, thank you, Tian.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is Andrew Bowden. Is it okay to ask why Tara Welsh is no longer our counsel?
I guess Trish might be able to address that.
So she just had another assignment. She's still with the department, and I think on occasion the legal team adjusts depending on staffing needs and new attorneys. So I just think she was just reassigned. No particular reason.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any other comments from the committee members? Okay, hearing none. We will move on to item C, the public comment. The committee may not discuss or take action on any items raised during the public comment section except to decide whether to refer the items to the committee's next strategic planning session and or place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. And so with that, I'd like to ask if there's any members of the public attending the meeting today that would like to make a comment or bring anything up before the committee.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. We're currently sharing instructions for your reference. And in the Ask field, typically in the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, please type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send to all panelists. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. Seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item D, update on the Department of Consumer Affairs. And today, Mary Catherine, the manager, Board and Bureau Relations, will present this agenda item.
Actually, John, sorry, this is Trish. That's been updated. It's Ryan Perez. He'll be presenting.
Okay, my apologies.
As well. Good morning, Committee Chair Shinsky and committee members. I'm Ryan Perez with Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to provide a department update to the committee. COVID-19 has affected every aspect of our work for more than a year now, and Thank you to Trish and the other committee staff who have been working so very hard to maintain excellent customer service throughout these challenging times. DC offices remain open with preventative measures in place to safeguard the health and safety of our employees and the visiting public. Boards and bureaus are looking ahead to what changes can be made permanent for efficiency and employee well-being, such as telework and eliminating paper processes. I encourage all members and the public to visit DCA's COVID-19 website for updates and resources on the state's reopening plan, public health guidance, vaccinator resources, and vaccine distribution information. DCA is receiving many questions about when and how boards, bureaus, and committees will be able to meet again in person. And while I don't have a definitive answer today, I would like to offer some clarification. As you know, the ability of the committee to meet remotely is tied directly to the governor's executive orders and the declared state of emergency. When these are lifted, the committee will be required to follow all aspects of the Open Meetings Act, including publicly noticed and accessible meeting locations. We do not yet know when this will happen or if any changes in the law will occur before that date. But DCA will do all it can to assist the boards, bureaus, and committees to transition safely and with enough time to plan for in-person meetings. I'd like to share a few updates to DCA's executive team. In January, Governor Newsom appointed Monica Vargas to the role of Deputy Director of Communications at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Monica was an information officer in the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services since 2015. She was an information officer at DCA from 2013 to 2015, and we're very lucky to have her back. And in February, Governor Newsom appointed Sarah Murillo as the Deputy Director of Administrative Services at DCA. Ms. Murillo has gained a wide range of experience in her nearly 20 years of service to Californians in various state departments, including California Complete Count Census 2020. Ms. Murillo brings a skill set that makes her well suited to support all the entities within our department, and her appointment fills the final vacancy in DCA's executive office, and we are very pleased that she has joined us. For current committee members, 2020 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year, which means all employees and committee members are required to complete the training during this year. As a reminder, newly appointed and reappointed members are required to attend board member orientation training within a year of appointment and reappointment. This isn't anything that the committee members will have to be worried about until about a year from now, but keep that in mind. I'm sure you'll be updated again. DCA is excited about the new and improved training, which has been updated based on member feedback and requests. The next training that we'll hold is in June, and another one to follow in October. Finally, I would like to update you on two exciting new initiatives launched by DCA Director Kirkmeyer for 2021 to enhance DCA service to all boards and bureaus, as well as the committee. The first is an executive officer cabinet. This group of board, bureau, and committee executives has been formed to maintain regular communication, provide feedback and information to DCA, and assist with special projects that impact all boards and bureaus. The group has met several times and is making progress on projects such as standardizing board reporting requirements. The second is the Enlightened Licensing Project. This work group is helping individual boards, bureaus, and committees streamline and make their licensing processes more effective and efficient by utilizing best practices, information technology solutions, and cost-saving measures. The work group has begun a deep dive into the licensing processes at the Board of Registered Nursing, with process improvements being implemented in real time. We'll continue to update you on this as the initiatives progress. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help, and if there's anything we can do to assist, please reach out. This concludes my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Committee Chair Rashensky. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Do any of the committee members have any questions for Ryan? All right, hearing none. Thank you again, Ryan. We'll move on to item E, review and possible action on the December 2nd, 2020 LATC meeting minutes. I'll ask that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, forgive the interruption, but this is the legal counsel, Michael Knotes. We are required to take public comment after each agenda item. It can become redundant, but we need to do that under the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. I apologize. If anyone with the public has a comment for Ryan or a question, please follow the procedures here.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
All right, we'll move on to item E, review and possible action on the December 2nd, 2020 LATC meeting minutes. I'll ask the committee members that if they have any comments when speaking, please remember to open your line and identify yourself prior to making your comments. And with that, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 2nd, 2020.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, we have a second, and now I will open it up for discussion among the committee members. Any comments, suggested edits, anything of that nature?
No.
Okay, yeah, I do not have any myself. All right, with that, I will ask for any public comment on the meeting minutes.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
All right, I'll ask again the committee, any thoughts, concerns, anything regarding the minutes? Hearing none, I will take a roll call vote. Those in favor of approval, Andy Bowden,
Aye.
Susan Landry,
Aye.
and Pamela Brief,
Aye.
and John Roshinsky is an aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, we will now move on to item F, the Program Manager's Report. Update on LATC's administrative management, examination, licensing, and enforcement programs. And Trish Rodriguez, the Program Manager, will make this presentation.
Thank you. So the first thing I wanted to note about the program manager's report is previously we had updated within the monthly executive officer report, and after that report was changed to, I believe, a quarterly report, the timing of some of that information for our purposes didn't really align. So what I've done is sort of reverted back to having a separate program manager's report where the information, some of it may overlap with what is also relevant for the board, but primarily focuses on updates for the LATC. So we'll assess to see how this goes and, determine if this might be the way we proceed for updating the program. So to begin my update, the out-of-state travel blanket request for the next fiscal year would due on April 5th. A request for the CLARB annual meeting in September was submitted for the LATC. I submitted the request to include the program manager, LATC chair, and executive officer. Also, under business modernization, LATC is part of the second cohort for the department's business modernization project. The project received approval from the Department of Technology on April 1st and the Department of Finance on April 6th. This progresses the project to stage 3 of the project approval cycle, and the next steps will be to discuss stage 3 activities at the Executive Steering Committee meeting planned for tomorrow, April 30th. The online renewal interim solution continues to be a successful tool. There have been little to no technical issues, and the processing time to issue an online renewal is 1 day. The board meeting dates are included, as well as the LATC meeting dates in the packet. LATC will have its strategic planning session in November. Prior to that meeting, DCA Solid will conduct an environmental scan, including interviews of stakeholders, committee members, and staff, anticipated for sometime during the summer. After the regional stay-at-home orders in December by Governor Newsom, the board was able to reopen to the public on January 26th. Staff whose duties can be performed remotely continue to work from home. We recently had an outreach presentation with former LATC member Christine Anderson and exam coordinator Blake Clark, who provided an outreach presentation via Zoom on April 15th to UC Berkeley students. 20 students were in attendance, surveys were collected, and the overall feedback was very positive. Under personnel, the assistant executive officer position remains vacant. We recently updated our retention schedule, as amended to reduce the retention period for expired and deceased license files from 50 to 25 years. This change was recommended by DCA Records Management and in line with other DCA programs. The updated schedule was approved on March 15th for 3 years, expiring in March of 2024. An update on our social media account. LATC maintains a Twitter account with 215 followers. Since December, when our last meeting was held, the account received 8 additional followers. Also, since our last meeting, we have posted information regarding COVID-19, including available resources, the announcement of the new candidate tutorials, information regarding AB 2113, and the qualifications of expedited licensure for refugees, asylum seekers, and holders of special immigration visas, shared a report from the Alliance of Responsible Professional Licensing on the value of licensing across a variety of industries, posted upcoming LAIR administration dates, announced application processing timeframes now available on our website, reminded followers of the online payment option for license renewals, and posted information regarding upcoming LATC meetings. Under training, staff have completed all of the DCA mandatory training courses, including information security awareness, ethics, and sexual harassment prevention. Members should have received an email reminder on April 8th regarding the mandatory training due this year. Staff will follow up next month to check in and provide any assistance if needed. Updates to our website. Some items include posting of the candidate tutorials, regulatory approvals for substantial relationship criteria and criteria for rehabilitation, and the repeal of the delegation of certain functions. Additionally, in accordance with Senate Bill 878 Jones, beginning July 1st of 2021, each board and bureau within the department must prominently display on their websites each quarter the current time frame for processing initial and renewal license applications. Processing timeframes for the LATC initial license and renewal applications for the first quarter were added to our website on April 5th and will be updated quarterly. The renewal processing timeframes are provided for both mailed renewals, which is currently 13 days, and online renewals, which is 1 day. And finally, staff are working on remediating documents on our website to comply with ADA requirements and meet the July 1st deadline. The board worked with legislative staff to incorporate language regarding LATC's objective to educate different jurisdictional agencies on the landscape architecture license and scope of practice. Specifically, the language would prohibit local jurisdictions from rejecting plans solely based on the landscape architect stamp. Proposed language to amend the Business and Professions Code 5659 was submitted to legislative staff in mid-March. However, the language was removed from the bill by the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee on March 30th. The next step will be to find an author for next year for a standalone bill or an opportunity to add to another bill this year. Staff continue to meet with Regulatory Council, which has been helpful in the progress of each of our regulation packages. CCR section 2611, abandonment of application, 2611.5, retention of candidate files, and 2616, application for licensure. Following examinations is in the final stages of pre-review process and was sent over to agency on March 29th. I'm happy to report for the form of examinations and education credits. This package expands the pathways to licensure, was filed with the Office of Administrative Law on Tuesday and will be published on May 7th, commencing the 45-day public comment period, which will close on June 22nd. During the comment period, anyone may submit written comments. If no comments are received, staff will prepare the final documents and submit for DCA and agency review, and then file with OAL for final approval to adopt the proposed changes. The regulatory package 2620.5, requirements for an approved extension certificate program, was sent to the director's office just yesterday on April 28th. The next step will be to forward the regulatory package to agency for review, which should complete their pre-review process and enable the package to be filed with OAL. And then section 2630, issuance of citations, and 2630.2, appeal of citations. This proposed rulemaking would revise LATC's appeal of citations regulations to be more in line with the board's procedures. The language was added to clarify the board's existing ability to issue orders of corrections to cease unlawful advertising under Business and Profession Code sections 149 and clarifying the 30-day deadlines are counted as calendar days. This package was approved by the board on December 11th and is currently with DCA Legal for review and Budget Office for analysis. The next package, 2655, substantial relationship criteria, and 2656, I'm just updating since it was right after our last meeting, was approved by OAL and became effective on December 4th. The package for 2671, public presentments and advertising requirements. LATC set an objective of researching the feasibility of requiring a license number on all correspondence and advertisement platforms to inform and protect consumers. Currently, section 2671 requires that a landscape architect only include their name and the words landscape architect in all forms of advertising or public presentments. In an effort to better inform and protect California consumers, the proposed changes of the LATC's current advertising requirements will expand to include license numbers in all forms of advertising. Proposed language to amend this section was approved, submitted to the Office of Administrative Law to publish notice of the 45-day comment period, which closes on June 2nd. And then finally, section 2680, disciplinary guidelines. In order to comply with Assembly Bill 2138, changes to the disciplinary guideline were necessary to reflect proposed changes to section 2655 and 56. Section 2680 incorporates the disciplinary guidelines by reference and required changes to reflect the revised disciplinary guidelines. This package required extensive review and consolidation of proposed edits to the language, completed with the assistance of LATC Regulatory Council. DCA Legal is currently finalizing the entire package and preparing it for Budget Office official review. And behind the list of our regs is a chart. The chart is attached for the status of regulations, which has been updated. However, since assembling the meeting materials, 2615 and 2620 regarding our education and training credits listed at the bottom of the chart was filed with OAL, as I mentioned, and will reflect in orange, indicating the beginning of the public comment period on May 7th. Okay. And then moving on to our charts for the California supplemental exam. Actually, before we get to that, it was necessary to amend the interdepartmental contract for examination development since CLAR postponed their job task analysis. This item will be discussed later under item J during the meeting. And then performance data for the CSC during the current and prior fiscal years is displayed on the charts listed on page 13. Data regarding the November 30th through December 12th LAIR administrations is provided on pages 14 and 15. This administration was conducted normally without any COVID-19 related issue experienced in the earlier administrations in 2020, including postponements or extended administration periods. And then finally, LATC opened 10 complaints during the first quarter and closed 6 cases, which averaged 147 days to close. There are currently 9 pending cases for the same period. I'm happy to answer any questions. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Trish. Any of the committee members have any questions or comments? Yes, Susan? Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was supposed to push the raise hand function or just raise my hand, so I did both.
You can raise your hand.
Okay. I know that little hand's hard to see. Yes, thank you very much, Trish. I got a question. Why was the 5659 rejected about the licensing? The city's rejecting, not being able to reject us.
So Laura, you can chime in here, but
Sure.
I believe some of the language required the bill to go through multiple committees, and in order not to delay the other, content of the bill, they just removed it, and that's why we'll pursue it separately as an individual bill.
So it
Yeah,
wasn't
just
for content.
This is Laura. I was just going to add to what Trish was saying that it's a issue about local preemption, and so those issues go to a separate committee than business and professions, and so it would have required the bill to be double referred, and business and professions didn't want to deal with that, so they took it out. I did reach out to the consultant that I think it's the Governance and Finance Committee. I haven't heard back from him, so I don't know if they have I don't think they have a particular issue with it. It's just that they hear those type of issues just as a rule. So we'll do a little bit more work in the interim and see what we can do for next year.
So it has to do with the, what did you say, the locals?
Local preemption, right? So that local authorities can't make their own decision. Those are issues that they want to hear and weigh in on.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Is John Roshinsky, Laura, just a question on your last comment. You're saying that local authorities may choose not to enforce this or not require?
Well, I think, right, isn't the issue currently that some local authorities are making their own determination outside of what the LATC Practice Act says, and just that the committee wants to hear issues where you prevent local governments from making their own determination. So it isn't that we know that they have a concern with that, just that in general, they want to hear that type of policy change.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we were referring to the inclusion of license number.
Oh no, this was about, let's see, this is, I don't have it in front of me now.
This is
whether local authorities, local jurisdictions can make a determination as to who can prepare plans and not accept a landscape architect's stamp on certain types of plans.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
John Roshinsky, I do have a couple questions in regards to the BPC section 5659, the exclusion of the license number requirement. Is there any reason why we were removed from that bill? I think you addressed that, Trish, but I'm just curious if they gave any specific reason other than the fact that they wanted to be expeditious with the bill. But I'm wondering if we were removed from that, were there any other provisions of the bill that were removed as well?
I'm not aware of what other provisions may have been removed. And the only reasons we were given was, as Laura stated, so that it would not delay and could be reviewed by the second committee.
All right. Because I have some concern about that. If they removed us, wouldn't the bill have to go to all those committees anyway?
This is Laura. So the bill has to go through Senate Business and Professions, and we'll talk about it under the legislative update. It's SB 607. But with this language amending 5659, it had to go to the Senate Governance and Finance Committee, which means it would go through 2 policy committees. And so the main author, Senate Business and Professions Committee, the chair, didn't want to have to go through the double referral process. It makes it a little bit more challenging to meet the deadlines, so they took it out. But the other provisions of the bill don't need to go to governance and finance.
Mm-hmm. And if we have somebody sponsor us in reintroducing this as a standalone bill, do we foresee any specific difficulties moving it forward, or? I'm just wondering if a standalone bill would be as successful as just adding it to something else.
It's certainly easier to be in an omnibus bill kind of for that reason. So Trish did a really good job of reaching out to all impacted stakeholder groups and didn't find that anyone would have any concerns, like particularly from local government type groups. So I don't expect that there would be a problem. It would have to go through governance and finance, so the bill would get referred there. So we just have to find someone who's willing to take on the issue. And at this point, we don't have anything to pair it with, so it would just be a standalone bill.
All right, thank you. And again, John Roshinsky, I have another in regards to CCR section 2671, the public presentments and advertising requirements. If and when that becomes enacted, do we know if there'll be any grace period in regards to firms, individuals being able to continue to utilize or use up their existing stationery, business cards, all of that type of thing? Or will it be immediate that they'll have to include their license number on those?
Well, once it takes effect, it would be, required from that point. But, I'm thinking of business cards. Nothing would prohibit them from, writing their license number on there.
Right.
That might be a little harder to do for stationery, depending on, if there's an electronic version, maybe they could update that. But there would not, as far as I understand, be a grace period.
Mm-hmm. All right. And my last question again, John Roshinsky, is in regards to the exam program and the charts where we're looking at pass rates and that sort of thing. Do we have, I know that we're basically showing the statistics for the pass rate, the failure rate, and the total. Do we have information that we could include in the charts of, say, over a last given period of time, what the average rates were, so that we have some way of knowing, is the pass rate getting better in compared to what it's been over the past several years, or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah, we could maybe, I think it's administered 3 times a year now. We could go back perhaps 1 to 2 years and see what that might look like, and include it in the next program manager's report.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I guess beyond that, if the committee has no further comments or questions, I'll open it up to the public.
John?
Yes, Susan?
Sorry, I have a question.
Mhm.
Let's go back after John's comment on 5659. Do you need any justification of why we're doing this? Because I was denied being able to submit plans to the city of San Jose, I think 2 years ago. They said I had to be a civil engineer and I had to argue my case that we're licensed to do the similar work. So FYI, if you need any justification of why we need this bill, I can provide that to you.
Okay, this is Laura. That would be helpful, Susan. So I'll follow up with you and get those details, and we can include that in our information and justification. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I will open it up to any public comment or questions.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen and type "I would like to make a comment" and send to all panelists. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it looks like we do have one request from individual identified as Stephanie Landrigan. Stephanie, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you very much. This is Stephanie Landrigan. Thank you, Chair Wyszynski, and to the committee members. We seem to be beating BCP section 5659 to death, and so I'd like to join in on that. Several years ago, there was a white paper put out by Don Fisher on this specific direction as to why landscape architects have the right to stamp plans. And I guess my question is, was that part of the bill? And the dilemma, I understand the local jurisdiction issues. I don't see how a local jurisdiction can supersede a state licensing requirement. And if other state licensed professions have this problem, and why we do and they don't. It would be very curious to hear that, how that is explained. Can I ask for some clarification?
So this is Trish. You're right, Stephanie. It continues to be an issue. We made an attempt to educate the local jurisdictions as well as those that have experienced issues with having their license accepted by providing a copy of the legal opinion, which is still posted on our website for a quick reference. However, we were made aware that the issue continued, and so therefore became a part of our strategic plan objective. And so that is why we're taking this next step in amending section 5659. Hopefully that will clarify things in the local jurisdictions. And then, as you know, we recently updated the building officials guide and distributed that amongst various jurisdictions as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question sufficiently.
All right. It does help. Thank you very much, Trish. I'm very interested in this sort of being resolved, and if I can help, please let me know.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we'll move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Tracy Morgan Hollingworth. Tracy, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Great, thank you. We just had a discussion about the license number being placed on what I guess you all call public facing, types of messaging. I'm assuming that applies to websites, signage, and obviously the business cards and the letterhead. I asked the CCASLA board whether they might like to take a position on this, and they said no. It's really more of a consumer, type of thing. That I know a lot of the realtors objected, and they were given a grace period to especially because they had a lot of very expensive signage that they had to update. So that's the thing that I think CCASLA was most concerned about. They didn't take a formal position, but they were kind of surprised that it didn't have a little bit of a grace period. Just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
This is Stacy. I just want to comment as the enforcement analyst that if the licensees do not have their license number on their public presentments and someone complains about it, it would come to me. I wouldn't give them a grace period, but I would more than likely just educate them and let them know that it is something that they have to do sooner rather than later. And then it would just end up kind of being a warning that they've been warned that they need to add it. And then if I do get another complaint about them not having it, then that's probably when the I guess punishment or whatever would be possibly a citation because they have been warned and then they haven't done it. So it's not necessarily a grace period, but I'm not going to cite someone right away. I'm probably just going to educate them and let them know that they need to add it. So I hope that helps.
All right, this is the moderator, and it looks like there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed. And just as a general reminder, you will need to click that raise hand icon again to lower it. Unfortunately, I'm not able to lower your hand for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item G, review and possible action on proposed regulations to adopt California Code of Regulations 2651, waiver of fees for licensure renewal or replacement of licensure upon declaration of emergency. And with that, I will ask Trish Rodriguez to present this agenda item.
Thank you. Okay, so effective January 1st, 2020, section 11009.5 of the Government Code allows state licensing entities to reduce or waive licensing fees for people affected by a proclaimed or declared emergency in the previous year. Licensing programs within the Department of Consumer Affairs may, but are not required to establish a process for reducing or waiving the licensing fees of those impacted by federal, state, or local emergencies. In February, LATC staff worked with DCA Regulations Council to prepare a draft regulatory proposal, Attachment 2, that would implement an emergency fee waiver by adopting California Code of Regulations, Section 2651, waiver of fees for licensure, renewal, or replacement of license upon declaration of emergency. The committee is asked to review and recommend approval of the attached draft proposed regulatory language to adopt 16 California Code of Regulations sections 2651 to the board.
All right, thank you. At this time, I will open it to any questions, comments from the committee members. All right, I have a couple. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm having difficulty because I cannot see all the board members on my view here, so I apologize.
Okay, I'll just keep speaking up then, John.
Okay.
You know me enough by now.
This is the moderator. Can I interrupt real quick? If you click the layout button and then uncheck show participants without video, that should show you only the people who have video on, and then that should make it easier to be able to see all the committee members.
Oh, there you go. Oh, cool.
Great,
So,
thank you.
thank you. I asked Trish about this yesterday. If this took effect on January 1 of 2020, shouldn't it be retroactive to this last year for us?
No, it would go into effect once the language is adopted. The declaration of emergency was in January of 2020, but the proposed language would go in effect once it's approved.
Well, the way it's worded in the document that we have before us under summary, it says effective January 1, 2020 allows state licensing entities to reduce or waive the fee. So you're saying we then also have to adopt it, even though it was over a year ago?
That gives us authority to be able to waive the fees, but we need the regulatory language to be able to do so.
And we can't make it retroactive back to the January 1 of 2020.
That's correct. Karen, did you want to clarify anything if I'm missing it?
No, I know for me, it was hard with 4 or 5 months of no work to pay $400. So I don't know how many other people out there struggled this last year. That's why I was wondering if it could be retroactive.
No, but I do believe, we are working expeditiously and trying to get this implemented as soon as possible, so that it's there in place in case there is, for the next emergency.
Mhm.
Let's hope it's not a similar one.
Yeah.
All right, John Roshinsky, I have a couple questions. Have we had anybody that has applied for this waiver in regards to dues, or I should say fee renewal or anything like that?
I believe we were contacted by individuals during the last fire. Let me double check with did we? Yeah, we did receive a couple of individuals who who were impacted by the fires and wanted to know if there were any provisions in place. However, at that time, we weren't able to waive any fees or assist in any way.
Right. And I'm curious, it doesn't mention anywhere in here what the length of time that this waiver would apply. I'm assuming that they would have, each time that they were due for renewal, they would have to submit a new for a new waiver if that was the case. I'm just curious how long this would apply for. And secondly, if they do submit a waiver, what's the process for actually verifying that they really are in a hardship case?
Their address.
Okay, so it's just assumed if their reside or their business resides within a declared disaster area, that is what the primary criteria would be.
Correct.
Okay.
And to answer your first question, I understand the waiver to be for the one renewal period, and our licenses are issued for 2 years. So if I'm not sure, Karen, if they would have to resubmit at the end of that second year, if this provision allows for them to have an extension if needed. I understand it to just be the one time, unless there's a new declaration that impacts them.
All right, and my last question is, I assume that this applies only to like license fees and that type of thing. If they've been assessed penalties for any reason, that would not be included in this, correct?
Yeah, it's for initial renewal those types of fees, not for any enforcement items.
All right.
To get the specifics, this is Karen Halbo, the Reg Counsel. You need to make sure you're looking at the text language, which I believe was attached with the board memo. It's mentioned as item number 2. And down at the very end, under subdivision E number 2, it talks about the waiver is effective for a certain period, if the emergency continues, then in the next renewal cycle, if it falls within 2 years of the proclamation or declaration of emergency. So
All right.
for in these fire burned areas, if either their business or residence is within that area, they've got some breathing space.
Thanks for that.
And my last question is, how are the boards or bureaus notified in regards to this declaration of emergency and when it's lifted? Do they actually receive notification from the governor's office, or?
I'm not sure how the declaration, the emergency declaration is announced. But once it is, we could, on our part, notify our interested parties lists and licensees to let them know that the waiver is available.
All right. I'm sure that would be a much appreciated service to them. All right, with that, I'll ask Pamela.
Yes, thank you, John. Since we're discussing the length of time, I do have a question. I just need some clarification. I'm not understanding the text in section B under the language as you said. If we look at B, the last sentence, it says the applicant or licensee may apply for a waiver of fees within 1 year of the date from which the emergency is proclaimed or declared. And then the section that you referred to in E number 2 is talking about 2 years. And I'm just not understanding the writing there. Can you clarify that for me?
It says basically that the waiver is granted for that specific period, and to the next renewal cycle if the declaration of emergency is ongoing. Sometimes the declaration of emergency is for so many months and sometimes it's longer. You know, for COVID, we had a very long declaration of emergency.
Right. So a little unusual, right? Yeah.
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 But that
So
was to keep them from having to renew if the emergency didn't end and they're in a new renewal period.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so you have for 1 year, but it covers you into the next cycle should that need to happen. Is that basically what it's saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions from the committee? Okay, if not, I'll open it up for public comment.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. It looks like we do have a request for public comment. Stephanie Landrigan, be unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you, Chair Wyszynski and committee members. I just want to clarify. So since it, if we're looking at B under 2650, it has to be filed within a year of the date from which the emergency is proclaimed. So, or declared, which means the COVID emergency, which was proclaimed in January of 2020, will exclude any COVID requests for relief. However, I kind of understood from E, and I think a committee member brief said this too, that it has the 2 years. So if the emergency continues, there's nothing in this article that covers that. So it seems to me that is a deficiency of this piece of code or regulation, and since that is a very long emergency that preceded, so it's not through the whole declaration of the emergency. It seems very narrow in its application, and also right now, since this is being enacted right now, it may address other emergencies, but it's not addressing the emergencies this piece of legislation was written to address. Can the committee make changes to this section legally?
So the language that's proposed is it was provided by DCA, a template that is that was distributed among all DCA boards and bureaus. For consistency purposes, I would think that we would try to, not make many changes, but we certainly can. And I would ask Karen for assistance on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to take a look at the government code 11009.5 to understand a little more what's the nuance in terms of a long declared emergency. But that will take me a minute.
Andrew or John, can I ask a question while she's looking it up?
Yes.
These have been unprecedented times, and I would think in lieu of, with that intent of how unprecedented this has been, I was really hoping that we could make this retroactive back through to the start of the state of the emergency. I'm myself, it was a challenge during the 4 or 5 months of not working, and I can only imagine there were other people that might have had the same issue.
If I may piggyback on that, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The reason I'm asking this is you may not be able to make it retroactive, but you might be able to, and B, make it that it could apply for the waiver of fees within 1 year of the date of the beginning of the emergency to the end of the declared emergency. So you open up the time period, you have a set time period in which that year start comes. And that's why I think your legal, your attorney is looking at it. That to me seems an option that would then, nonetheless, you have no idea if it goes to OAL or anywhere else, how long it's going to take. But at least gives you a little more leeway in an emergency to respond, because as we all know, when you're in an emergency, you don't think about, and this happens with, insurance claims. Oh my gosh, I have to file it right now, because you're dealing with the consequences.
Yes.
Mr.
Karen.
Chair. The language of the government code section requires that the application be made within 1 year of the date on which the emergency is proclaimed or declared. So that language is directly from the statute, and the regulations can't go against the statute. I am wondering if this legislation was much more aimed at fires and the type of emergencies that devastate landscape architects and landscape business, and less about a pandemic which hit the entire economy. But that's the reason we have the language in the regulation, is because it is tracking the statute.
Yes, John Roshinsky, I guess I have a question. Was there an official declaration of emergency in relation to the COVID pandemic? And was the intention that that declaration of emergency covered essentially all business activity in the state of California? Was that the intention? And I'm not sure who can answer that, but.
Well, I have the state of emergency being declared March 4th of 2020. And then different governor's orders have been specific to different things. We at DCA have been very interested in when they made changes to the Bagley Clean Open Meeting Act. That was important to us. But there have been a number of different orders, very targeted, not anything specific to the whole economy.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Andy.
Andrew Bowden. So if what Karen just said, that the declaration was made March 4th of 2020, and you have to file your the paperwork within a year, that means you had till March 4th of 2021. But there's no provision for doing that yet because this proposed regulatory language has not been approved yet. So it kind of seems to me as though we're discussing something that, is very difficult to pin down until this regulation is approved. Once it's signed into law, then, it can be enacted. So I don't know that, unless the state wants to say, well, it's going to be retroactive to March 4th of 2020, I mean, who knows? The declaration could be ended by June 15th if we were to take the governor's word for that's what he was planning on doing as far as opening up the entire state. So the timeline is kind of a shifted sort of thing. So I think that I would agree that this was probably more targeted towards the fires than it was to COVID. It just so happens that COVID followed right after a bad fire season. So, and going forward from this, now obviously the regulation would be in place, so any additional declared emergencies would be able to be handled through this regulation. COVID, I think, is just a one-off thing, hopefully. And I mean, it's happened, it's done, we're almost through it. I can certainly appreciate those people that suffered financially through that period of time. I think we all suffered financially in one way or another, but we're coming out of it. So I don't know how the state would, make it retroactive. They'd say, okay, well, in your next license cycle, you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay your license dues because of the declared emergency. I mean, it just kind of would be logistically kind of difficult, I think, to kind of work out. Of course, that's not for us to say. We're just the LATC. We're looking at this proposed regulatory language. It's really for the, legislators and for the, the attorneys that are involved in making this thing work. I'm just commenting on my own personal observation of what I'm seeing here today. So I'm not sure that has any value necessarily, but I think that technically until this piece of legislation is approved, there's really not much that can be done unless we can convince the legislator to add on to this and saying, well, for the COVID emergency, it is retroactive to the date of March 4th, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could suggest that, I don't know if that would be something that they would entertain, but.
Yeah, yes, because I think my question is if it did become retroactive, and because the COVID declaration was statewide, does that mean that basically all licensees could request this waiver to have their fees waived?
Yep. I mean, what proof would you have to show that you were affected? You know, those people who already paid, do they get that money either given back to them or their dues or their license fees suspended for a year for one term because they said, well, I was affected, or if somebody, I mean, if somebody hasn't paid yet, I can kind of see that if they fall into that cycle and they haven't paid their dues just yet because of it, that may be a different situation. But for those people who have already paid and been practicing like they normally would, I'm not sure that it would be incumbent upon the state to say, oh, okay, well, we're going to give you that money back again. I don't know how they necessarily determine that. I mean,
Right.
with the thousands of licensees there are throughout the state, I mean, that would just be incomprehensible that they would be able to spend the time to go through each individual one.
Yeah, and my guess is the intention of this is for basically future emergencies.
Yeah.
So with that, if there's no more questions or comments at this time, I would ask for a motion to approve the proposed language as written. Yes, Susan.
I'll make a motion and I'm going to attempt something, see how it goes. I make a motion that we approve the proposed draft regulatory language of adopt 16 CCR section 2651 and add language that it's not just from the year the date emergency was proclaimed or declared, but it's when it ends.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
The justification I wanted to point out was this current one was over a year. So if you had to apply during the start of it and it's still going on and say you suffered in February or in March or April, then you would not qualify. That was my reasoning to add about when it ends.
That language is in direct contradiction to the government code section. So in the legal process, legal affairs would have to say to the EO, you can't go beyond your statutory authority given by the legislature. Your suggestion is a good one, but the legislature has to do it. We don't have the power to make that change.
Okay, I'll resend that portion of the motion and stick with just the adopting 16 CCR section 2651.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Okay, any other comments, questions from the committee? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a vote to accept the motion as presented. Andrew Bowden,
Aye.
Pamela Brief,
Aye.
Susan Landry,
Aye.
John Roshinsky, aye. Motion carries unanimously. All right.
Mr. Chair, did we need public comment on that before the vote?
I believe so, because actually we took public comment before we took the motion. So I don't know if we need to open it up again to public comment.
Mr. Chair, I think that the public comment that we had before the motion was sufficient. It was only on the proposed regulation, and I noticed that occur, but I thought we'd already had public comment that would suffice for the motion as well.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I realized that I should have called for a motion before we went to public comment on that one. All right, we will move on to item H, review and discussion of the 2021 legislation. We'll ask Laura Zuniga to present this item.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, so starting with AB 107 by Assemblymember Salas. This bill is in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It has to do with temporary licenses for military spouses. And under existing law, certain boards are required to issue temporary licenses. Architects and landscape architects are not included. So this is expanding that a bit, but it does say that it doesn't apply to boards that have a process in place by which an out-of-state licensed applicant in good standing, who's married to or in a domestic partnership with an active duty member of the armed services, is able to receive expedited temporary authorization to practice while meeting state-specific requirements, or is able to receive expedited licensure by endorsement with no additional requirements. So the committee analysis doesn't list this bill as currently applying to the board or landscape architects, so we'll have to do a little bit more research to determine, but at this point, it doesn't look like it will have an impact. Are there any questions? Okay. The next bill is Assembly Bill 225 by Assemblymember Gray. This bill is also in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It requires certain boards to issue temporary licenses to veterans and active duty members of the armed forces within a certain amount of time after they've separated. So it expands on existing requirements to issue temporary licenses to spouses, to also apply it to veterans and active duty members who separate. This bill at this point isn't applying to the board or LATC. Any questions? So the next item is Assembly Bill 252. This bill is on the Assembly floor. It's made it out of the Policy Committee and Appropriations. It establishes the multi-benefit land repurposing program at the Department of Conservation to provide grants to groundwater sustainability agencies or counties to fund local programs supporting or facilitating multi-benefit land repurposing at the basin scale. Does anyone have any questions about this item? Okay. The next bill is Assembly Bill 564. This bill is going to be a 2-year bill. It didn't move out of Policy Committee this year, but it establishes the Biodiversity Protection and Restoration Act and provides the policy of the state that all state agencies, boards, and commissions utilize their authorities to further biodiversity conservation purposes and goals of the governor's executive orders in this area. Are there any questions? Okay, the next item is Assembly Bill 646 by Assemblymember Lowe. This bill requires licensing boards to update or remove information about a revoked licensee within 90 days of receiving an expungement order related to that conviction. So this would apply if we had revoked a license against a landscape architect. It's posted online. If we receive notice that they've expunged that conviction, we would have to take down the information. Are there any questions on this item? Okay, the last item is Senate Bill 607. This is in Senate Appropriations. And this bill, as it pertains to landscape architects, it contains the fingerprint requirement implementation language so that LATC can implement this requirement starting next year. This is the language that we had in a bill last year that Department of Justice had some concerns with. So we heard from them, address their concerns, and the language is going forward now. We don't foresee any additional problems. So LATC can start doing this next year. The board started fingerprinting this year. This bill also in general, it requires boards to waive the initial license fee and then the application fee for spouses of military members who are applying for licensure. We have to expedite those licenses now, so this would also require us to waive their fees. Are there any questions? Okay, that's all I have on these items.
All right. Laura, I do have a question in regards to, could you bring us up to date on the legislation that's been introduced to expand, potentially expand CEs for state architects?
Oh, sure.
Licenses?
It's AB 1010 by Assemblymember Berman, and it would require architects to complete 5 hours of CE each renewal cycle in zero net carbon design. And the bill right now requires the board to adopt regulations to kind of define that a little bit further. Under existing law, architects have to complete 5 hours and disability access every 2 years. So this would keep that requirement in place, add this new requirement for an additional 5 years. I think AIA California is the sponsor of that legislation. I think that they would be one of the providers of that coursework. But the bill doesn't specify who would have to provide it. There's no one person that the licensee would need to take it from. So the board has reviewed the legislation or reviewed the proposal in the past, and we'll probably just.
Mm-hmm. And what's the current status of that one?
For expanding it further.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all I have on that one.
Okay. And is that one currently in committee? Has it made it
Oh,
out
yes.
of committee?
It made it all the way out of the assembly over to the Senate. So
Okay.
we're halfway done. Yeah.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll open it up. Any questions for Laura? Okay. I'll open it up to public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right.
All right, we'll move on to item I, presentation by California State Water Resources Control Board, and it's in two parts. Part one, review and discuss exam process, content areas and requirements of landscape architects for qualified stormwater pollution prevention plan developer certification. And part two, review and possible action on preliminary staff draft of the statewide construction general permit reissuance. And so with that, I will ask Stacy Townsend to introduce us to this agenda item.
Yeah, so just a brief summary or background. At the November 8, 2019 committee meeting, members discussed the QSD certification requirements and process for landscape architects as a result of receiving correspondence from a licensee regarding this. At that meeting, the committee members expressed further interest and requested a presentation on the extent of the QSD certification training program requirements to become QSD certified, the importance of being QSD certified, and how landscape architects can become QSD certified. A presentation was provided at the September 4th, 2020 LATC meeting regarding those aspects. After the presentation, the committee members expressed additional interest in receiving information on the examination process to become QSD certified, the subject areas of that exam, and stormwater requirements of landscape architects for QSD certification. So at today's meeting, Brandon Rosenboom is back, and he will provide a presentation on the additional information that was requested at the September 4th meeting. And he will also provide a presentation on the proposed language amending the construction general permit. So Brandon, whenever you're ready.
Hi, this is Trish. So right now, I just got word that there might be a little bit of a delay for Brandon to get on. He's having some technical issues. We could either take a brief break and come back to this, or I can move on to the next agenda item. What would John? What would you like to do?
Do we have any idea how long Brandon thinks it might take?
No, not at this time. He's
Okay.
trying to.
Okay, because I'm looking at the time. It's 11:25. I think we were planning on taking a lunch break around noontime. I'm not sure. I guess what we could do is we could move on to item 2, but I don't know if Brandon needs to be involved in that as well.
Yes, item 2 is actually will be presented by Brandon. That was at his
Okay.
request. So we can move on to J. And
Okay, why don't we do that, and then maybe we can take a lunch break after J, and then when we come back, go back to item I,
okay.
if that's agreeable.
Susan, you're vice chair, so I'm assuming that's okay.
Looking at the report here. Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So item J is there's no action item on this. It's just an update that our current intra-departmental contract with OPEZ for the landscape architect California supplemental exam was amended. The original contract was anticipating that the LAIR, CLARB's task analysis would be completed, and then the updated CSC would align with, you know, their updates based on their task analysis. So it was recommended by OPEZ that we amend the current contract to include the examination outline development workshop and evaluate passing score workshops. And so this is just to let the committee know that the contract was amended with the new contract amount, $32,696. It incorporates the linkage study workshop and evaluation of additional costs, $4,784 and $1,152 respectively. Are there any questions?
Yeah, John Roshinsky, I'm assuming that this is all basically premised on us just moving ahead with the schedule, and I know that we have discussed in the past some issues with the fact that CLARB delayed their occupational analysis, and I'm assuming that if we vote, or if we just move on with this, that's not going to disrupt our process moving forward. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none, I'll open this up for public comment.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And it looks like we do have a request for public comment from Stephanie. Stephanie, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you very much, Chair Roshinsky, and to the committee members. I understand this is just sort of a perfunctory requirement, but I would also hope that one of the metrics that is going to be used with this, specifically related to California, is the diversity and inclusion and equity of our applicants and candidates. How many, I think, would be really important to do a metric on what is the success rate of the whole plethora of individuals who apply. I know CLARB is doing some issue related to success. They tell you, you know, what colleges will give you a success rate. But I really think it's important, especially for California, that we look at in our California exam that we are addressing an equitable exam for people. I know that recently the attorneys, the bar, made some changes based upon trying to make their exam more equitable and inclusive.
This is Trish. I can relay that information back to OPEZ.
Thank you. I think that's something that every one of the boards and California exams need to be addressing very rapidly. Thank you very much, Trish.
John Roshinsky, I have a question for Trish. Do we know at some point when this process moves forward, will OPEZ be coming back to the committee to give a presentation on what they're planning on doing?
Yes.
And maybe what we can do is we can ask when they come back to specifically address this issue that Stephanie has brought up, what their approach is on that.
Sure, I will relay that as well. They were initially going to be on our agenda, but needed additional time, so I do expect them to be at our next meeting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Andy, are you raising your hand or is it just cramping up? Okay, I'm assuming that there are no other public comments.
Correct. There are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay. I'm just looking at the agenda here. Do we, in terms of item K, do you know roughly how long, Trish, that particular item is anticipated to take?
It could take some time. We were asked to collect additional information and come back for further discussion, which Stacy did. I think it may take some time. So it might be a good place to break now if I don't see actually Brandon on the call, so it'll allow me time to check in with him.
Okay, I was going to say maybe what we could do is go to item L really quick, just review the future committee meeting dates and get that one out of the way.
Sure.
So if you will bring us up to speed on that.
Okay, so it looks like the next board meeting will be on June 11th, and as you can see, all of the locations and for now will be held via our webcasts. And so the next meeting for LATC is scheduled in August, and then we are going to do strategic planning in November.
Okay, so that's as far as the strategic planning session, the November meeting, is designated for that versus our first meeting next year?
Yeah, we originally were going to plan it in early next year, but once the board had identified when they were doing their strategic planning, we went ahead and moved it up to November. So at this time, I just have it down as a one-day meeting. If I foresee that the agenda actually will have a significant number of items, I may poll the committee members to see if we need to add an additional day. But for now, and we have in the past been able to conduct both the meeting and the strategic planning all in one day.
All right. I just one question I have is in regards to our next vote on committee positions, the chair and vice chair. I assume that's going to take place during the first meeting of next year versus the November 5th meeting.
Normally we do it at the last meeting of the year, and it takes effect at the following meeting. So we could discuss it in November, and it would be effective in the first meeting in 2022.
Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Susan.
Thank you. I think the strategic planning session would be very important to be in person. Can we change this once after, hopefully in June, we're back open? For instance, we have not met Pamela in person. I have not. It'd be nice for us to all be together.
We will certainly assess that. If things open up, we would love to have it in person.
Okay, I support that. If we could in August, that might be too soon, but I do think, especially strategic planning, it would be great that we all could be in the room together. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'm not sure. Do we need to open this up to public comment? I mean, we can.
Mr. Chair, we do for each agenda item.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and open this up.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, we have a request for public comment from Stephanie. Stephanie, I will be unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee members. I think, though, one of the benefits of having telecommunication is the inclusion of the public without travel. And since travel is also something that has potential exposure issues, I would like to request that you continue your telecommunication opportunities if you do go back to face-to-face in the strategic planning meeting. Thank you very much.
Don, can I make a comment? My understanding is if we do an in-person, that they would also be a hybrid meeting where you still could do teleconferencing and in person at the same time. So people like Stephanie would be able to attend without travel.
That's my understanding.
All right, this is the moderator, and it looks like there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right.
All right, and I am going to propose that we take our lunch break at this point in time. I have 11:40. Why don't we plan on being back here at 12:10? And that will give us half an hour. Okay.
All right, this is the moderator, and to members of the public, we will return at 12:10. Thank you.
Thank you.